From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView Podcast.
And welcome to this week's episode of the DuView Podcast. I am your host, Du, a.k.a. Ryan Dumont, and I am joined by, I guess the best way to describe this man is my mentor throughout high school, the athletic director of Cony High School, Mr. Jon Millett. Mr. Millett, thank you for coming on, or should I say coach? I don't know what title to address you by at this point.
Well, from you, Ryan, I'll answer to just about anything. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. So, like I said, I've looked to you, through my life for advice, and so I figured, hey, I'm sure you can bestow some wisdom upon my my listeners as well. So, again, thank you so much for coming on. And recently, I've come back to Augusta, Maine, come back to the hometown, and started working over at the high school, and it's been interesting because it's given me a lot of time to think, especially when getting ready for this episode, about the journey that I've gone on and getting to know you. And as I was, telling you earlier before we started recording that I had, I was thinking about, the first time we met, and that was right around 10 years ago now. Right around 10 years ago. I mean, I just got out of middle school, was in, 8th grade going into my freshman year of high school, and I wanted to play soccer at Cony, for the high school. And so I had contact one of my friends, Josh Antworth, and got in touch with him, and he got me in touch with you. And so you're like, oh, who's this kid from St. Mike's that wants to play soccer, So it was, 10 years ago, almost to the day, in part that we're doing this now. And so that's excellent. So again, thank you. And just the mentorship side of things started, yes, at soccer, but they quickly developed. Am I not mistaken?
Well, it's interesting, Ryan. I was thinking, when you asked me to be on this show, I was thinking about how we met and how our bond formed, if you will. I can remember meeting you when you were about 3.5 feet tall, coming out of middle school. And I remember the first time you stepped on that soccer field in the backfield, and you kind of had a little commanding presence. You weren't overly fast, but you understood the game, and you were like a little general, a little Napoleon in the backfield. And I liked your style. That's what I remember most about you. And from there, we had a lot of common interests. We both liked the outdoors. We both had taken canoe trips in the Willy Wax of Maine, hunting, fishing. Great areas to bond with. And, as a teacher back then and a coach, you're always looking for ways to connect with kids so that you can cash in those chips when you have to be the hard guy. But with you, and I never had to do that, but it was always fun to engage with you. And our circle of friends, if you will, or colleagues, grew in numbers because you had a great bunch of friends who also played soccer, and I had all of you guys in class, and when we weren't learning together, we were learning about each other and the things that we shared, and we were kind of like our own little community.
Right,
and it's
definitely.
Always nice when that can happen.
I couldn't put it any better myself, Coach, to be honest with you. Getting to that's a great segue into, talking about, I call the boys, you call your boys, right? When we go out, they're like, are these your boys? We go out to breakfast as a group or something like that. It's, you kind of want to take ownership because, we're not a completely bad group, right? I think that you maybe got some help with a rototiller or something like that at one point from Jake and Nick. Is that what you meant by cashing in the chips? No, I'm joking.
No, actually, what I meant by that is that as a classroom teacher, at some point or another, you're going to have to discipline a kid or correct a behavior or give negative feedback. And while you try to do that in a positive way, it's easier for someone to receive criticism if they've received positive feedback
Right.
as well. And so that's one of the important lessons of teaching, and knowing that you have to throw out those positive chips before you can cash them in for a negative one.
Oh no, okay. I was joking mostly. But I completely get that, and that's interesting too, because you've spent a lot of time in the class. How many years did you spend in the classroom before making the move to athletic director?
30.
30. That's a long time. I mean, that's a lot of students, right? Past, present, and well, it would have been future at the time, but you know. And I obviously not to, any bias or anything like that, but what made, and I just have been meaning to ask you this question for a long time, but never really thought about it until now, in part just because of the setting, but what made our group different or stand out than maybe in comparison to other, groups maybe that you've become in contact with over the years, if that's all right?
Oh, that's fine. In life, you should always be honest with people. And I think with the group, our group, we were able to be brutally honest with one another in a way that was a little bit different, not inappropriate, but a little bit different than typical teacher-coach relationship. And, it wasn't like it was just you and the guys. It was your parents were involved in a lot of this stuff as well. I became good friends with your parents, and some of them I already knew, and some of them I grew to know and like, and some of them are still my friends today. It was really a unique opportunity to develop some positive relationships that are going to last a lifetime from 4 years of high school.
Right, yeah, and it's amazing, people emphasize that 4 years so heavily, and again, my 4 years would have been so different to not have the, the Coach Millett or the teacher Millett. I mean, because I had you for both class and on the field, which made it really unique, for me, seeing you at both, or at different spots during the day, right? Teacher Millett and Coach Millett are similar, but a little bit different, right? Just because of the atmosphere. I mean, like, both are pretty loud, as you know. You have a very good command of the classroom or the folks on the field, which I think really gravitated us towards you, right? Because we had that full experience, and we know if we needed anything, we know which classroom we could stop in. And I think that those relationships, especially in education, are so important as we see things continue to develop. And I really do truly hope that folks have some of the similar opportunities to create a relationship with a teacher or a staff member at school, that I got to have. I mean, because it's, like I said, it's impacted my life so greatly. And it's just either nice to have somebody to turn to or to talk to. I can think of, even just like talking from anything from the outdoors to, this happened to my snowmobile, or, whatever it may be. And I know I know that you can think back to a few of the conversations that we've had. It makes it nice. And so I appreciate that. I know the boys, they appreciated it a lot, still do, obviously, to this day. It's like I said, we don't always get together as often as we used to, but it is nice when we do have those times. So switching gears a little bit, getting away from some of the more personal stuff to more focusing on you, Coach. So as you said, you taught for 30 years in the classroom. When did you decide to, make the move to athletic director, or to apply, go out and apply for that position?
Well, throughout my career, I've always tried to reinvent myself every 3 to 5 years. If you were to look back the course of my career, I taught economics my last 4 years. And before that, it was honors world history for 5 years. And before that, it was just regular world history. And before that, it was U.S. history. And before that, it was middle school. This was another opportunity to reinvent myself and do something new. I never want to become stagnant. I want to always try to have the opportunity to learn new things and grow as an individual. And I saw it as a challenge. It was also an opportunity that wasn't going to come up again for years if I didn't try for that opportunity. So that was why I threw my hat in the ring, and it was an opportunity for me to have a larger impact beyond the classroom, beyond just the sports that I was coaching with. And it's been very eye-opening, and it's been an educational process.
No, most definitely. As any new thing is, obviously, when we set off to do, new things, especially in our careers. I mean, I've learned just being in the working world for a very short time in comparison, obviously, that, it is good to reinvent yourself. And I mean, in just a short time working, have worked a lot of different jobs too. So I can definitely connect with that. And, I didn't really know that about you, to be honest with you, that you reinvented yourself career-wise. But now that you mention it, thinking even to when I student instructed with you my senior year, you were teaching, some global class. It wasn't just, one type of class. You know what I'm saying? You had global, you had econ. But when I had you for world history, as you had, or honors world history rather, as you had mentioned. And so that's a great, unique perspective. And, talking about the classroom real quick, I'd like to share a quick story from your honors world class. We're talking about, the Renaissance period, or the start of the Renaissance period in Europe, and the move from the Dark Ages to the Enlightenment, or to the Light period. And you had, and this is one reason I really loved your classes. You had a clip from Monty Python's the Flying Circus, the Spanish Inquisition, that you used in your slideshow. And I don't think many of my classmates really got it. I mean, I lucked out that I had older parents that showed me some of those older, comedy pieces. And I think I just about fell out of my seat laughing. And I think it was maybe just even you and I that were laughing at it. But it was just it was awesome. I mean, like, that's the type of stuff that I really feel like sets a lot of the unique teachers and the teachers that stand out we have. It's like stuff like that, the stories we remember. And so I don't know if you remember that specific. I
do.
That was just most excellent. And like I said, that was hilarious. And like I said, it's just those little things that teachers do that make such an impact on students, even if it's just one, right? I mean, that's what it's about. And,
Well, that's where making connections is so important, and you're not going to have the deep connections with every student, but inevitably there is an adult in the building that you can connect with, that shares some common interest if you're open-minded and you look for those opportunities to connect with people.
Right, most definitely. And it's interesting too, looking back at the differences, I'm sure you think about from time to time, that you think about the classroom, right? When you get that rare free moment to daydream, do you think of the classroom? I would assume you would, because I mean, it was a huge part of your life. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, obviously.
Absolutely, I think about it. I remember all the things that were best about it, but in the same thought, I also remember the things that became cumbersome, and you get tired,
right,
of doing the same thing,
kind of like
every day.
Burnout, kind of. I mean, in part,
that's why I always tried to reinvent myself, was to avoid burnout.
Prevent
and I did not want to get to the point where I became unfresh and was not giving 110% to what I was doing.
Right. I mean, that's so essential, because, I mean, you are, and I mean, I'm sure you know this, but you are the type of person that gives 100% in just about everything he does. And I mean, regardless if it's on the pool deck coaching swim, or if it's, on the soccer field or the track coaching track or soccer, you always, even on, the days that we could tell you might not have been having the best day, you still showed up to give us your 100%. And I mean, that really kind of set the tone for the teams you coached. I mean, just to focus back on our soccer team that you coached, I mean, we were not the best team in terms of record when I started out. I mean, we were like the league bullies, really. I mean, in part, everybody's like, oh, we're playing Cony, how many red cards are they going to get? And that culture change came about, with you as the head coach. And I mean, obviously, some of the, the guys in my grade, some of our friends who became part of that real close friend group also helped change that culture there. But, could we go into, if you don't mind, just like the focusing on that culture, and what was that like when you first came, over and started coaching the boys team?
It was a culture shock. I didn't understand the mindset and the mentality of play the man, not the ball. And so changing that took about 5 years for me to stop the culture of playing the man instead of the ball. And slowly over time, and I'm proud of this, we became a good soccer team.
Respectable soccer team.
A respectable soccer team that exhibited sportsmanship and that people respected. We might not win, but we came out and we played a pure game of soccer.
A true game of soccer as it's supposed to be played. Again, not like some half football, padded football rugby combination, which is ironic because I did go on to play rugby in college. But, and I remember being a part, just feeling the difference in the team from freshman year. I mean, being, on JV and, playing my role and going through things. And by the time that I was a senior and a captain, it was a whole different team. Like, yeah, you had a couple, yellow cards here and there, but it wasn't like every game. And, the chances of getting to playoffs became very real. Maybe it got down to like winning one or two games at the end of the year that we may not have won, to sneak in just at that, that last bracket spot. But it definitely made a difference. And I'm happy that I actually lost, to be honest with you, Coach. I'm happy that we lost because it really taught me some of the best life lessons. I mean, those games when you'd go out there and we'd get absolutely throttled by Lewiston, like 10-0, but in the beginning, but by the end, and I mean, I know you had a couple other teams after I graduated, but that game we played against Lewiston, that 5, and I still remember that game as like a 5-2 or a 5-3 game. I mean, they made the mistake of underestimating us and putting their B squad in, and we kept our guys out on the field. And by the time senior year, that culture had changed. We were playing real, organized soccer. Right. And I mean, like, we came out there and started surprising people and catching people off guard. And I mean, like, that culture change, again, taught me so many different life lessons that it's okay to lose. It's okay to fail. You actually, and I know it's kind of cliche, but you learn more when you fail. And I mean, you forge like I guess not to be, again, too cliche again, but you really form the bonds of brotherhood with some of those people. And like I said, some of those folks, yourself, I mean, as the coach, and then, the guys that I played with are still some of my closest friends. And again, we've just have that shared experience, which, makes it so we can, talk about a lot of different things, which really changed things when I went to go swim for you, because that was a whole different culture. That had been a long... And again, do you remember how many years that I'd started swimming? And I think in probably 2012, it would have been by this time the season actually started that winter. But how many years were you coaching swim?
Well,
at that time, but
I started coaching Cony in 1996.
Okay, so I mean, this has been a long established, like the Millett swim culture, if you don't mind me calling it that, right? Yep. And so, how did seeing somebody like me, and again, not to just use I know there were other people that you obviously recruited from soccer to come swim. Like, what were you looking for when it came to, having some of those kids that, maybe never swam before, or, moving from a team where you didn't have to change the culture, right? You're already an established culture. This is kind of how we do things, like we have a pretty good powerhouse, of teams, and you've had some fantastic teams. I mean, state championship teams, more recently in your, last few years of swimming with the girls team. But like, what do you look for when you're trying to, get more people to come over? Is it the same type of things for soccer, or?
Swimming was more about a passion, something that I loved and I enjoyed sharing with other people. And it's different because it's more than just a team sport. It's an individual sport, and it's an opportunity where your success is dependent on how hard you're willing to work individually. It's dependent on your commitment to yourself, and you look at where you start and where you finish, and that's how much you grow and improve, and that's all on you. So, and that's so much different than a team sport like, say, soccer, where you need to really come together collectively and communicate really well, where you can be successful individually.
Right, and that definitely an interesting dynamic, and that was always really unique for me. I mean, because like, if you don't move as a unit, in soccer, the whole thing falls apart a lot quicker, But at the same time, with swim, if your individuals don't rise to the occasion and don't work hard, the team won't win meets either. And so it's unique because it's an individual, but it's a team sport at the same time. And same thing with track, obviously, too. And I guess quick sidebar going off of the swim thing, well, rounding out all three sports that you had coached in my time, what made you interested in coaching track? Where did that come from? Did that piggyback off swim, or did that predate swim? Where did that come about?
Well, I started coaching track in 1989.
Oh, so that predated. Yep.
Well, I was coaching swimming already.
Right, just not at Cony.
Just not at Cony. I actually was teaching in Vassalboro doing my student teaching, and they needed a track coach. I didn't know a thing about track, but I went to some clinics, did some reading, and I started off as a track coach,
Right.
Throwing and jumping.
Yeah.
And that's basically where I put the feather in my cap throughout my coaching career.
Right.
A lot of the lessons and things that I know from swimming gave me the knowledge and the ability to train sprinters and distance runners because it's the same basic principle.
Right, most definitely. I figured obviously there's definitely a lot of crossover there, and so now that you're athletic director, obviously you're at the games, maybe on the sideline, but it's not obviously in the same capacity or the same role. So if you could narrow it down, I don't know if you can or not, but what would be the one thing that you really miss about coaching, right? Because coaching is kind of a different, regular circumstance, happenstance, managing a team's a little bit different than managing a classroom. While there's always overlap, it's different, obviously.
It's the closeness of the relationships, working together, seeing individual and collective improvement over time, and seeing the individuals and the team recognize the progress that they're making. I miss that the most. I mean, as an athletic director sitting on the sideline, I have two goals. I don't want to see poor sportsmanship. And
you have a zero tolerance policy for that, as I know too well.
And I don't want anybody to get hurt. Those are my two biggest things that I sit and watch about. And if we can get through an event without any issues,
without Alicia getting called, right?
I'm happy.
Right, most definitely, and that's awesome. And so I guess saying the things you miss about coaching, but what's the new things that made? And I mean, I know with COVID, it made sports very unsure, right? It made kind of the seasons is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Field hockey might happen, but football is not going to happen. And obviously that, makes certain people, upset. You have a lot of different, emotion, behind that with people. But is it, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it, what are the good things about the job? Like I said, I know that, that things have been difficult this year for a lot of people in their professions, but, prior, if you can even think back to prior to COVID, what makes makes it worth waking up in the morning for?
Well, when everything is all set, when the bus schedules are set, when the officials are set, when there are no changes in the schedule, and you can go to a game and just watch the game and enjoy it, and then talk to kids or athletes after the game, before the game, in the hallways. The opportunity to make connections with kids is very rewarding. Unfortunately, the downside of the job is that often the logistics require a lot of attention to detail, and so you have to work really hard to make and continue to maintain connections with kids. Which is why I got into education to begin with. Right.
Yeah, and no, that's definitely interesting. And that, again, when a perfect plan comes together, right, it's almost harmony, right? And like I said, I've been with you on the sidelines, either as an assistant or as a player, and to now see you, I stopped over for a soccer game back this past fall, and it was good. It was interesting to see you, at the gate, right? You were working the gate, making sure people had masks, had this, had that, right? And I'm sure that's not, again, you're the type of guy who's willing to do anything. The job that needs to get done will get done. But I'm sure that's not something you probably saw yourself doing this year. I'm sure it's been different.
There's a lot of things that educators never signed up for this past year. And we all adapted the best we could. The biggest challenge about this past year has been how the rules changed on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And so trying to anticipate the changes, dealing with the resistance to the changes, because people resist change.
They do.
Was always a constant challenge. And sometimes some of the changes you didn't necessarily agree with, but those are the rules we had to play with.
That's policy, right?
That's the job,
right? I mean, I'm sure you have to be the bad guy from time to time, right? And with that aspect, and as you said, the rules change, and even just today, I mean, we had the announcement that we don't have to wear, even with at school, don't have to wear masks outside, and I'm sure that's going to impact things at sporting events, for you. I mean, I can think that it's just specifically with track and with baseball and your other sports, you're getting close to the end of the season. You're getting playoffs. KVACs are for track this weekend, as a matter of fact, and it's just. It's gonna. I'm sure not flip flopping. That's the wrong word for it. But the constant changing, the constant changes definitely make things difficult. So looking at the future, what do you see? Do you see how long do you think you see AD Millett for, or athletic director Millett for? Do you think that's another good amount of time, or do you think you see yourself reinventing things and doing something else before you retire?
Well, my 3 to 5 years, I've got a few more years to go.
Right,
I'm
right.
only 2 years into this gig, and I still have a lot more to learn.
Right.
So this job may go more than 5 years.
More than the pre-prescribed.
Yeah, there's a lot more to perfect.
Yeah.
And there's still stuff that I'm learning and figuring out. And so that's the challenge that I face. The one thing I've found is that I need to do a better job of is managing my time better and taking more time for myself.
Which I hope you get to do this. I hope you get to do this summer with the school year coming to a close. But to get to the big question here, before I ask you a few other little side bits, is that I always look to you, and I know I mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, the beginning of the episode, but I always look to you for advice in life. Whether it was in high school or even now. I know that we still chat from time to time. About. Even when I was working on the presidential campaign, how are things going? I'd check in with you about sports teams or whatever. We talk about life. How are things going? What are you going to do when you come back type of thing. But as I look to you for advice in life, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to take that next step in life, looking to maybe make that next career move or reinvent themselves or try to, prevent that burnout? Like what would you recommend?
Well, a couple things, Ryan. First, and I think I kind of alluded to this earlier in the podcast, don't be afraid to take a risk, okay? Risks have reward. They're opportunities, and the way you approach them, even if you fail, as you said earlier in the podcast, there's a lesson to be learned, and it's an opportunity to grow. Never be afraid of failing. It makes you who you are, and it makes you a stronger person. I think the other thing that I would remind people is the one thing that we can control in life is our attitude and the way we approach things. And so it's up to us as individuals to project a positive attitude, and just trying to have a positive attitude can make all the difference in the world in whether you're successful or whether you're not successful. Simple things. Always carry a $20 bill in your wallet in case you get stuck somewhere.
That is good advice.
Well, I like to think so. I like to think that always follow your heart, or your gut. If something feels too good to be true, it probably is.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So, I just. Everybody can be successful. They just have to find the path that interests them the most. And if you follow your heart, you'll be happy.
Right. And that's interesting that you say that too, Coach, because, a lot of people forget that at the end of the day. They really forget that it's sometimes the little things, to remember the happiness, to remember to, follow their heart, so to speak, or, follow their gut, so to speak. And so that's definitely good advice. And I would highly recommend some good sage advice from you. That's fantastic, Coach. So thank you for that.
I got a couple more though.
Okay, by all means.
The next thing is, don't ever let your friends down. Okay, if you make a promise to your friends, follow through. Okay, because your word you are your word, and
you're only as good as your word.
Yeah, and that's a better way of saying it. Treat every job you ever get like it's the most important job. on the planet, because you never know who's watching or what connections you'll make while that, because just the opportunities that you could create from a positive interaction with somebody that watched you work your butt off could go a long ways and create an opportunity for you in the future.
Right. You never know. You really never know who's watching. And sometimes the people that watch don't say too much, right? You know, that's at least from my experience. Some of the most qualified onlookers are sometimes the most quiet, So that's definitely interesting. And like I said, the advice, like I said, I just value your advice so much. I figured you got to share. I have to share it with people, just as a bare minimum, there, Coach. Well, again, it's been interesting. I'm sure for you this year, with things, and I'm glad that you still have the positive, as I've always known you, the positive attitude with things with work or the outlook, and definitely the part with friends definitely drives home with me because, as you know, with especially the group of guys from up here, they're basically my family. You know what I'm saying? They say you can't pick your family, but you can pick your friends, and sometimes it's just you value that so much. And I've not always done the best job of telling them that, and I've this year really gone out of my way to let those guys know, like, hey, you mean a heck of a lot to me, and I try never to let them down. Like if Nick needs help, I'll go and help Nick. Or if Jake needs a hand, I'll try, or Josh, or any of them really. Even if Aaron needs a hand all the way down in east, God knows where. I'll do my best to try and get down there and see him, help him, because again, those friendships, those bonds, and as I'm sure you're no stranger to, it makes such a world of difference. And like I said, I honestly, I was in high school. Just in my personal life, went through some difficult times, as you know, and I don't know where I'd be today without you and those guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, you guys at the time and still today are not to sound weird, are the rock. They're really the foundation of the modern me, or of who I am now. And so, like I said, I'm appreciative of that, not only to you but also to them as well. And hope they hear this and listen in as well, because that's definitely well deserved. So with that being said, Coach, I do know you're a busy guy, and so I do appreciate you coming on. I know we're a little short on time for today, but we'll have you back on again without question if you'd like to join us. So it would be excellent, like I said, excellent to have you back on again, Coach, and I just really thank you for your sage advice over the years, and thank you for your assistance continuing in your friendship. Like I said, wouldn't be here today without you, so thank you very much, and really do appreciate you coming on today, Coach.
Ryan, thank you for your more than kind words. I'm very grateful. And this was an incredible opportunity, and I wish you the best of luck with your podcasts.
Well, thank you very much, Coach. And like I said, greatly appreciate it. We'll be back in another 2 weeks with our next episode. So be sure to stay tuned on all of our social media, YouTube page, everything for that, at DuView 207 on Instagram, the DuView Podcast on Facebook, and every other platform that we have out there. Thank you guys for tuning in this week. This is it for this week's episode of the DuView Podcast with my guest, Jon Millett.